It's hi, my name's Danny. I love all electronics, walking my dog Dolores and going fishing. When I'm busy doing the things I enjoy, life's just perfect. However, sometimes life can be tough. You see, I can get very angry very, very quickly. It takes everyone, including me, by surprise. My dad says anger seems to be my default, so I'm working hard on trying to change it. And then we have Gran, who says something, and we have a teacher, and it was the teacher that says, this is my teacher, Mr. Parker. I really like and respect him. He says everyone gets angry from time to time, but when I get angry, it's like a switch flips on really quickly. Mr. Parker says I need to change that flip switch to a dimmer switch. If I can do that, he says, it will give me time to try to get control of my anger and make some better choices.
Hi everyone, welcome to the Sue Larkey podcast. As I always say, you have to embrace difference to make a difference. Let's dive into today's podcast. Welcome everybody. I am so excited to have Kay with us today to share all about our new book, which is the Red Beast Workbook. Now, I must say, I was a huge fan of Kay's work and she's been on my podcast many times and we actually became really fast friends through the podcast, didn't we, Kay?
We did. It's so lovely. Always coming on this Zoom talking to you. It's just great.
It's so good. And so, I was very lucky because I'd been using the Red Beast picture book for many years with the children and schools I go into. And some of my schools have a whole class set to help the children understand anger. They're just the most fantastic picture books. And I know this week I had an email from a school counsellor saying she puts it in every school she goes into, the Red Beast book. And one of the things about the Red Beast book that I love, it's so practical, you can just pick it up and use it. But Kay and I both really realised it could be wonderful to have a workbook that goes with it, really to save teachers time and to give them ideas how to use the book to actually help children understand anger, their emotions, and move it from sort of that sort of picture book to actually a practical program to help children. Is that how you see it, Kay?
Absolutely. I think it's really important because you'll know and I know we get called into schools when children have problems with anger and then be told that the story went down really well and they could understand that and they were doing the sort of some of the strategies to calm their red beast, which was great. But how do you move on? How do you get them to develop emotional sort of responsibility and social responsibility for, how the anger affects not only them, but everybody else, all their family, their friends, the people in the school, and without being blamed, without being shamed. It's a way that you can work these things through with whole classes. It's not something you just have to do with an individual child, well, you can, but with a small group, or even I've seen things done right through the whole year group. So the whole year group would do something. And every child needs to learn emotional regulation. You can be too young, of course, to learn it. You can't do what your brain isn't ready to do, but you can never be too old to learn some strategies. And I think it's this journey is a sort of formative journey. So we're looking at it in a longer term. It's not like a book, pick it up, we'll do it a week and that's it, lovely. Because you and I know behaviour management is one of the still top of the list of teachers' concerns in schools. And it's never changed, has it? Even if we go back in the past, they got punitive measures. And we see science tells us 80-90% of children will respond to punitive measures, but it's your hardcore or your children with autism that are always outside the headmaster's office or, running around the playground without anybody supervising them. That are the ones that we really want to reach and teach.
100%, Kay. And my biggest passion is that all children can come into the classroom regulated, that they can come back from the breaks. Like we've got a whole section on winning and losing. We've got a section on words that can be hurtful and a beautiful activity to explain that. So this book, this is why I agree, it's for the whole class because all children say hurtful things. All children don't like losing. But for our children who are on the spectrum, often these things happen, or any children, not just children on the spectrum, but any of those sort of 10% of children who need us to teach differently. I think this workbook is for them. And that's why we've made it like a 14-day program. It's not a quick fix. It's actually a little program you can do with the whole class. And I think it's worth doing with the whole class to help them all understand anger and their emotions. Because I was reading something the other day that if we teach this in primary, when children hit teenage and secondary, these are the skills they need. Like, because when their hormones come in and all those things, that emotional regulation's ongoing. It's not one off.
It is. Yeah, but strategies need to be in long-term memory, and we can't put them there unless we practice. And we know science tells us all of our things are scientifically based interventions. You know, we do that, but we don't use any academic speak. We're doing this through the voice of Danny, which is the character in the book, in order for everyone to be able to understand. But to get them in there, we need to make sure that they do, if they want to know how to calm the beast. It's a 2-week thing. We're going to do some things for 2 weeks every single day, 5 days at school, 2 days at home. And then at the end of that, it should have gone into long-term memory. And now you don't need to think about it. It's like learning to drive a car. When you first do it, you can't do it. It's only when it all gets into your memory, you don't have to think about it. And that's what we want. We want these kids to think, well, I'm getting a bit, I know what to do. You know, make a graceful retreat to somewhere that they set up before and calm yourself, because then they know what to do.
100%.
And we can praise them, and that's what we need, isn't it? This compassion and the continuous positive reinforcement, which again is scientifically based. We know that positive interventions do work, but unfortunately, you go into school and you've taught this to the teachers and to the TAs and everyone, and then you call back in at the end of term and you sit at the back of the class and you realise, well, there's not a lot of positive reinforcement going on. You've forgotten about it because it worked at the beginning, but we need to get it into our own long-term memory as well as the children.
Okay, that's why I love doing it with the whole class, because it actually changes the language and everybody starts to talk about it ongoing, and it's not just a one-off thing we do as a class. And I love how the book starts off with Danny and him learning about dimming. Do you want to share about
the dimmers? Yes, that's it. That was something that I tried to explain to a child, that because everyone would say, just suddenly he's fine, and then the next minute he's off the scale, he's really, really angry. So I tried to explain to a child, and I had to actually bring one in because it's a bit of a 1980s thing. I'm not sure if we have dimmer switches now, but it was a switch that you could slowly turn the light up and turn it down. And sometimes I'd pretend there was a regulator on his back and pretend to turn it up and turn it down. No, but with you, it's like a flip switch. It switches on quickly, and before you know it, you can't do anything about it, because actually you can't listen. Your thinking brain is cut off, it's switched off. You can't, and we said, didn't we, in a big box, that this is all about that part of the brain, the amygdala, which is really connected with protection. It's not connection. You can't turn something off by talking about it when the child's in that state. You have to think about other strategies.
Yeah, and teaching them what turns their switch on. And as we've done in the book, talking about how it feels in their body, because some of my children can't even recognize that that's anger. And that's what I love about the picture book, and why I'd encourage people to get the revised and updated picture book, because the old book's great, but the new book's so much more inclusive, and Haytham's done some beautiful new illustrations.
Absolutely. He was so keen to do it because he hated those illustrations. They were just done literally overnight, sort of, for me, because I wanted that story and I needed it right away. And it was only when I saw that it worked on the child I was working with that I thought I'll try and get it published and send them off. But he never liked those illustrations ever. So it's a good exercise for him too. Yes.
Yeah. Well, that being said, Kay, you sold 50,000 books, which is unbelievable. I mean,
I think it was the premise of it, the idea that somehow we could use a metaphor, because we're so quick to judge these children and say that they don't understand these things, when actually, if you put it in the right format, They do. And I saw this. I mean, if you go right back to when Haytham was a little boy, what did he enjoy? He liked watching cartoons. He could speak Disney before he could speak. Then as soon as he had the motor skills, he loved to draw cartoons. So he had, and then you're thinking, aren't you, this is like they're inventing these things themselves. And now guess what? I just read a study, 1922 study, that showed that if you do you remember the Simon Baron-Cohen thing about the language of the eyes? They're now doing it with pictures of eyes, but with cartoon eyes. And guess who excels on that test? Adults excel better with the cartoon eyes because that's what attracts them. They're attracted to, let me get this right because I thought we didn't know this when we started all this, anthropomorphic actions, or things like anime, cartoons, anything Avatar, the things that the kids love now on their computer is exactly what our children were doing like. He's going to be 38 next week, so 35 years ago.
38, oh my goodness. But also Thomas, I mean, we've always known that the faces on the front of the trains and the eyes is what so many of the children love. And people used to say to me, is it the train tracks? No, it was, and explaining the emotions and how Percy's feeling and Thomas.
Yes, and the fact they could see it. And I think with Haytham, he would be the rewinder. I mean, it was the day of the video recorder. And that was just like magic for him because he could rewind it, watch again, drove his sister mad. But that's what he would do, keep rewinding. And still he got really good. And I remember taking him, he got, as Matt mentioned, he got expelled from his first school when he was 3 because he escaped on a tricycle down the road and they thought he wasn't quite ready. So I tried to get him into my daughter's school and I had to take him in for an interview and they weren't like the other school. They took him in on the strength of my daughter who had great social skills and was brilliant. He was a student. Soon turned out he wasn't. But this school weren't. And in the interview, they said something, they asked him some questions like, do you have any brothers or sisters? And he said, and he's now 6, my brother is my sister. Because he only had a sister, he didn't have a brother. And I could see alarm bells going off, in the head. So she called for the special needs teacher to come along and have a little look at him, who became a really good friend of mine. So she took him upstairs and did the good enough draw man assessment. I don't know if you remember that.
No,
so where they asked the child to draw a picture of a person, and then you add up, have they got eyes, ears, this sort of thing, gives you a mental age. And apparently she'd asked him, set the test, draw a bit. And of course he didn't draw people. He drew either frogs or monkeys. And he drew a monkey. So she knew that. But she said he's drawn a monkey in profile, which puts him off the scale of, intelligence. But they did realise there was something not quite right. They did take him in and actually we worked around it and I got a diagnosis sort of, a year later or so. But yeah.
Wow. But what's amazing, Kay, is through you wanting to understand and help him, you've been able to help so many other children and look at him now. How many books has he illustrated?
I know, yes. And he loves to do it and he works from home and it just, everything about it suits him because, it's something that gives them, they get social pleasure out of drawing cartoons, reading comic books, watching, anime films or whatever. These children enjoy that. It's not just, but it also, we know now, improves them socio-cognitively because we can see that this carries on into adult life. And if you do those sort of mind reading tests on neurotypicals and people with autism, when they're adults, they're more or less the same, especially the girls. There's not much difference. But in terms of using the cartoon eyes, they excelled. Yeah. They actually overtook the neurotypicals in understanding the emotion.
I'm just looking in the book, Kay, at the faces that he's drawn in the new book, in the workbook. Yes. And it's the expressions are just amazing. When I try and draw a face, they all look the same, but I can just flick through here. I love the way that he's got the red beast with the pouting and the cheating and the eyes and the mouth. I mean, I can't wait for people to have a look at how gorgeous it is because he just captures it so well.
That's it. And that idea that you've not got a negative attitude, you're doing pouting, shouting, or clouting.
Yeah.
And because he's got the pouting, he's got the shouting beast, and he's got the clouting beast as well, hasn't he? So it's really funny.
Adorable. And also the F's. Hang on, I'm just looking for them.
The freeze, flee. That's right. The freeze one is particularly good, and it's still showing the anger, although it's frozen.
It's so gorgeous. I might try and put that with the podcast so people can see how clever he is with that.
And the fluster was a really nice one too. And again, I wouldn't have been able to tell him, can you draw what fluster is? Because it's really, but he just gets it.
100%. I couldn't believe when we were doing the book together, Kay would go, well, I'll get Haytham to draw something for this. And I think, how's he going to draw it? And then a week later, you'd send me these amazing pictures. And we didn't have to send any back. He did
them all. And he particularly likes black and white.
Yes.
No, the picture books are great. They're in colour. But if he has a choice, he much prefers to draw in black and white. And I remember Makaton years ago when I was learning how to Makaton, they always and still do use black and white symbols, whereas many people now have used colour symbols. But something to do with the brain and the access to the brain, I don't know. It needs a.
No, I agree, Kay. With Boardmaker, I often say to teachers, don't colour it in. I know you want it coloured in as a neurotypical person, but my neurodiverse children prefer the black and white line drawing. Yes. And I think it's really important. The colour can often be distracting, actually, for some of my children. So anyway, let's get back to talking about the book. I know this is as you can hear, our listeners, Kay and I go off on all these fabulous tangents. But what I wanted to say with the book is there's fabulous downloadables that they can print out, isn't it, that Haytham's drawn to go with the book. So. Yes. Our understanding is buy the book and then you can print out all the printables to use with the class. Is that right? Okay.
I think that's right. You can use it as a workbook and write in it. You can still do that if you want to, but to preserve the book and to have it on A4 size sheets, then download. And it really comes out really well. So all the pages that you need to work on, you can download and then photocopy. As many as more, can't you really?
Yes, because we originally imagined the book being A4 because we're teachers and we always
A4. The others were, it was surprising. But I think it is a nice sort of nice size, isn't it? Nice.
I agree. But the fact that everyone can print out Haytham's worksheets in A4 and still do all those, then
they can download it, I think, and then you go and photocopy it. So you can photocopy it, then becomes photocopiable. So then you can photocopy it without impunity.
Perfect. Are you prepared to just tell us a little bit about Danny or read us about that little first bit about meet Danny and his family? Because I love it.
Sure, why not? Hold on a minute, let me do that. So I need to find that first page, isn't it? Here we are. So it's my name's Danny. I love all electronics, walking my dog Dolores and going fishing. When I'm busy doing the things I enjoy, life's just perfect. However, sometimes life can be tough. You see, I can get very angry very, very quickly. It takes everyone, including me, by surprise. My dad says anger seems to be my default, so I'm working hard on trying to change it. And then we have Gran, who says something, and we have his teacher, and it was the teacher that says, this is my teacher, Mr. Parker. I really like and respect him. He says, everyone gets angry from time to time, but when I get angry, it's like a switch flips on really quickly. Mr. Parker says, I need to change that flip switch to a dimmer switch. If I can do that, he says, it will give me time to try to get control of my anger and make some better choices. And then we have Uncle Charlie, and I love Uncle Charlie the best because Uncle Charlie's the one who takes in fishing. I love fishing, and it's always a good time to talk about things because I feel relaxed. My uncle says being angry can make us all lose control, and before we know it, we can be in danger. He knows because he used to get angry too when he was my age. He showed me that by putting a D for Danny in front of the word anger, it spells danger. He says anger can make us be in danger of doing something stupid or hurting ourselves or someone else. We might lose control and do or say something we later regret and feel really sorry about. Uncle Charlie says anger's in all of us, and it's our job as we get older to try to learn ways to handle it better.
Absolutely. And that's what I love. And I love the danger too. And I love Uncle Charlie. And I love Hatham's drawing of the fishing. It's just adorable.
Yeah. In profile, we might have, yes.
Yeah, in profile, exactly.
In profile,
and then for people who are interested, the book then goes on for Danny learning ways to calm the red beast. And what he has to learn is what wakes up a red beast. And we talk about what wakes up lots of people's red beasts, and everyone. And that's what I love about the picture book too, talking to children. Well, what wakes up your brother's red beast, or mum or dad? Everybody's red beast wakes up for different reasons. So, and that's why I like to do it with the whole class, because one thing that makes someone angry can make someone else laugh, you know?
Yeah.
Helping children.
Absolutely. And I think because you're so brilliant with workbooks, we did those lovely tables, didn't we? So it's all there. It's just a matter of a tick or a face that you can put on, the children can choose, and then there's space to write your own if you've got something different at the bottom. So it's all ready. We don't have to make a list, get them to copy it out, remember it for next time. It's all there and it can be filed, and they'll have their own little books, you know, afterwards when you've sorted them.
And that's what's nice, Kay, because you and I have worked with lots of students. We're able to put in the things we know that students tell us and what we've experienced from that. So that's, yeah.
So there's lots of suggestions. There's loads of suggestions of how you can calm your beast, probably things they've not thought of. And there might be things, I used to do that with my class, and we'd have a little session at the end of the day. And they choose, do you want to have this really nice candles? Do we want to do a foot massage on each other? You know, we could choose, and so they'd be calm before they went home, because that's transitions are always trouble, and we knew that home time was often time when they were going to get overexcited or upset. So it's always nice for the parents, and they used to say, oh, they come out so calm. I said, yes, because we do calming before we leave.
So good.
Get our quilts out. And if I have to deal with children that I know are sensitive, I give them my cushion. I've got this really squashy cushion, and I say, I'm going to give you my cushion to shield you, to cushion you for what I'm going to say. And they would hold it and laugh, because, you know, it's just getting across to them that we might not like what we're going to say now, but actually I'm going to say because I love you, you know, and we're going to get through, we're going to work through this. So some of them would then bring in their own coat, they'd all sit with a cushion, you know, on their chest.
I love it. I love it. And this is why the book's so good, because it's full of all these practical, lovely solutions, and then the pictures that Hathan's drawn to go with it. And the other thing we're really conscious of, that some of our students don't always like doing lots of writing. So we've given options to colour in or to do writing and word finds. Like, there's a whole lot of different ways of learning for our different children. We haven't made it all writing or all colouring, or we've tried to make it very adaptable for each child. So depending their age and stage, that it's very accessible.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And also the one genius thing, and I stole this from you and I used it time and time again in schools, was those cards you did, sensory breaks, you know, movement breaks. And we've made those take a break cards downloadable, so you can give as a positive reinforcer at the end of a session. We pace it. It's done in small chunks. We never overface the child. When they're doing well, that's when you stop. You don't carry on for a bit more. It's like when you're doing reading, isn't it? And you get the child, they're reading really well, and then suddenly it all goes pear-shaped, and you end up, you know, saying, well, you could read that before. Why can't? No, stop when you're at a high. Do it. That's what we've tried to pace it, haven't we? And then you give them the choice of a take a break card for 15 minutes, so they know at the end of this session, you know what, I'm going to be able to read my comic or go on the computer for 15 minutes or go and have a run round. So that makes it just gives it the pace and the positive.
Absolutely. And I think what's really important, what you said there, is we've tried to make it really fun. And that's why we've introduced these lovely characters, and Danny's talking about himself. We've been very conscious to not point the finger at the child. It's Danny sharing his experience and then getting them to sort of share with Danny their experience and the adults. So
that's why it works almost better in a group, because then you can bounce off each other. Well, I find this. And also that helps, because what I find with children with neurotypical children is that they can aggravate. Yes. And sometimes they do aggravate the child, and that causes anger. I had a little girl who actually helped me with the writing of the book, The Panicosaurus. And she had been given a workstation and she had all her things on it. And yet she would regularly get almost blind with rage because people would just come past and touch things. And they'd run a finger and they knew she was going to be, she was going to get to lose it if they did that. So when I went into the class, I just had to say, look, how many children? 30. How many fingers have they got? 10. That's 300, isn't it? 10. That's 30. 300 chances that a finger is going to touch your stuff. What can we do? I got a big box, a beautiful box with pigs on it because she loved pigs. And we put everything in the box and put it under the table. And she only took out what she was using and then it all went into the box and it just cured her.
I love it.
And then the children, when we read the story of the book to them, they realised that they shouldn't have been doing that. They thought it was funny because she didn't like to touch. But actually that was it was waking up her beast.
100%. And that's what I love in the book, that I think when we do it as a whole class, we realize we all get angry about different things. And, some people shut down, some, and everyone reacts differently. And that's why when I talk to children, I love talking about different people, how different people react and making them feel like it's okay. I react in my way, but I need to manage that emotion. And I love what you said earlier, that we need to really get that into the child's long-term memory and understanding. So my question to anyone listening is, do you know a child who gets angry? Are they spending any time not learning or out of class? Have you tried things already that aren't working? Because Kay and I would think that often a lot of things schools use aren't devised for our children. And what we've done is put in this book all the things we know work for the children if what you're using isn't working. So, And
in fact, you can use it. You don't have to do the whole book. I had a PE teacher who had a problem with winning and losing with the children, most of the children, but especially the child with autism in his class. And I devised that exercise that we have in here specially for him. So it's based on what the teacher then told his children and what they did to prevent them to think about winning and losing, what that means. And then they had their little certificates to have. That's another thing we have, don't we? When they learned this, they've nailed it, they know it now, then they get a certificate to prove that. And that will stay and go home.
Absolutely. And we've also got in the book, because what I did when we were writing the book, I asked on Facebook, what are things that make children angry? And we took that feedback from hundreds of people that were things like winning and losing, perfectionism, sensory, and we've included all of the top things that people told us actually can make their children angry. And I mean, there were things Kay and I knew, but we wanted feedback from the community, like, well, where do you need help? And with the sensory.
Especially sensory, because sensory is something that they don't relate to. If you don't have sensory issues, it's very difficult to understand why when you just brush past someone in the line that they got angry. But when the class is learning about this and realises that they've got these sensory issues, and especially this one about interoception, which I think is going to be the new buzzword. We need to teach our children about interoception, because if they are hungry or thirsty, they are going to get angry. But 100%. They won't realise it's because their blood sugar is low and they need to replenish it.
I read a fabulous thing today, Kay, and it said self-regulation is the ability to manage, monitor and react through behaviour. Emotional regulation is the ability to control your emotions, and interoception is the sense of knowing of what's going on inside your body. And that's where all your picture books cover all of those. But I think in this book, we've combined all of that. We've combined
all in. I think we've also very nicely, because this is, again, it's a scientific sort of thing, the way we've used the cup sizes to show whether you're overly sensitive or underly sensitive, and everybody can do that, can't they? Maybe you don't, I don't like the smell of garlic. I'm really, there we are, big cup, middle cup,
well,
small cup.
People can't see this, but can you explain?
They can't, but let me turn to what page is that?
Yeah, so in the book, what we did, so that we could make it more visual, because Kay and I are very aware how visual our learners are, when we talked about the sensory system, we talked about how some children are oversensitive and some are undersensitive. And we use the analogy of using bowls, like the too big, just right, too small.
Yeah.
Do you want to explain it, Kay? Because you explain it.
Yeah, so we have this idea that there are 8 sensory systems, the 5 we all know, and then the proprioceptive, the movement one, the vestibular, that's your balance, and interoception, how your body responds to what the signals, the heartbeat, everything is telling it, and what the brain does to relieve you. So if you know you're hungry, you can feel your tummy rumbling, you know you're hungry, go and eat. But what if your tummy's rumbling and you don't know why? So you don't go and eat because you don't understand that you need to go and eat. So those things. So, and here we have Danny speaking, and he says, yep, no kidding, 8 sensory systems. My OT told me we can think of the sensory systems as having a different bowl for each of these 8 senses. These bowls need to be just the right size so everything's well organized and feels right. If you have sensory processing disorder, your bowls may not be the right size. Now, you can have SVD and not have autism, or you can have it generally is, but it's different for everyone. If we're oversensitive to the sense of touch, then that bowl's too small, and too much input will cause it to overflow, and we may find things touching us very annoying or painful, like wearing socks and labels in clothes or someone rushing past us. If we're undersensitive to the sense of touch, then that bowl's too big. So we may enjoy really big bear hugs, or being wrapped tight in a blanket, or wearing a weighted jacket, or we may not be sensitive to pain. In a body where the sensory inputs are working properly, the bowl is always just right, and so everything's working well. Each sense has its own bowl, so you can be oversensitive to one sense and undersensitive to another. So how did we put that into we talked about this a lot, how do we put it into language that Danny can explain it to others? So whilst it's scientifically based, evidence-based, it's in a way we don't use research speak.
No, and also then we can talk to the whole class about, and
Absolutely.
I like setting up sensory stations, and that was what we've done in the book, getting children to work out, well, some children love things and some don't like things. Yeah. And I love getting children, like I remember once in my class I got like, different feelings of things, like scratchy things. Yeah. And some children love a scrubby brush, or, others hate it. I mean, you're talking about foot massage. Well, some children hate having their feet touched. And so
I wouldn't be able to go to it. I don't know chiropodist. I wouldn't go for a massage. I don't like that. Somebody really close to me, they're not touching me at all. Yeah.
No. So that's what I love about the book, that you can individualize it for each child. And I actually think teachers are going to learn a lot, and educators, about the children in your class, what they're sensitive to. Like, absolutely. These are very important conversations. So you might discover that this child actually, when the lunch orders come in, or, what do you call it in UK, the dinner ladies. Yeah, the dinner ladies. Yeah, some of my children don't like this sound of other children eating, or the smell of the food, or even the
look of it, things going into the mouth. Yes, quite really.
And absolutely. Others doesn't affect them at all. And that's the advantage of the book, because for some of my children that can make them angry, and we're teaching them strategies to notice that anger and then regulate it. And so that's what excites me, that we're giving both children and educators and families, we would love you to get the book too, the strategies to help your children recognize and then regulate their emotions. But remembering emotions don't just come from perfectionism and all those things, it can come from sensory too.
Absolutely. And I think that your point there about, the dining hall and the thing, the problem is that quite often when children misbehave in the dining room, they get given a social story. And the social story is telling it that's not going to work. I had a child that would always kick off at the same time every day. When I went in, they say he's up the tree, he's climbed the tree, goes there every time at this time, and he won't come back in. And I realised it was because of the smells coming from the dining room, because they were ready to serve up. And so we brought him in through a different door, put him in a separate room with another couple of kids to have lunch. He never went up the tree again. But, they tried him with all sorts of social type stories. But if you don't know what's causing it, then they're not going to work, are they?
Yeah. I mean, I know lots of people who follow me on Facebook would see I regularly put up one of my favorite things, which is never in the history of calming down has anyone calmed down by being told to calm down. And for many of our children, there's no point sitting them out to calm down or sending them to the principal. What we need to do is work out the tools and strategies that child needs to self-regulate. And this is one of the struggles I have in Australia, that so often the current behaviour systems that we use that are so much more positive, but many of my children don't have the skills to self-regulate. So they end up, on the red step or what the red area, fifth step or whichever language the school uses, because what we're not actually doing is giving them the tools to not end up there, to help them dim that switch. And
that's right. And sometimes they just don't understand the system. I mean, I had a child and they kept saying, well, he's always on three ticks the whole time. He's on 3 already. He's on 3 and it's hardly started today. When I started to talk to him, I realised that a tick for him was a good thing. And he was, in fact, ahead of everybody because I've got 3. Okay,
I had a student exactly the same. And he, every time the teacher gave him attention, he didn't care if it was good or bad, because he was like, well, that's I'm getting my attention. So and he had this whole tick system himself, and he ticked. I didn't need to do a behaviour chart because he ticked off every time the teacher gave him attention.
Right. And what does every person on the planet need? Attention, affection, approval. If they're not getting those 3 things, they're never going to be happy. So as a teacher, as a parent, are they getting positive attention, affection, approval? And then I just have to sit in the back of a class and I can see immediately, their eyes go to heaven, don't they? He's in school again today. What does that say to the other kids in the class? It's not right. We have to be more compassionate, and we have to understand that these children that have problems with emotional regulation, they're not doing it just to make your day bad. They don't get up in the morning with the idea, I'm going to be really naughty today. That's not how it works. Yeah.
No, I think, Kay, that's a beautiful way to finish off this conversation. And I just really would encourage people, if they haven't got the latest, you don't need the Red Beast book. You can just get this new book and use it on its own. But if you haven't got Kay's original Red Beast book or the revised and updated one, I think having both together would work really well.
They do. They have been made, because we did change the character names to make them more sort of neutral. So it became Danny, it was Rufus in the old book. And there are a few things that I changed, and it's much more inclusive in terms of the illustrations there. So because our schools have changed, it's a long time since that book, was brought out, and now it was time for a rethink. But actually you don't need it, because we've included everything that you need in the workbook, but it's a good starting point if you start off with the story.
Absolutely. So thank you, Kay. So lovely to chat to you. And if anyone has any questions about the book or want to share with us, please let us know. Or if you've already got it and love it, please review it wherever you review books, because the more reviews we get, the more people we can help and the more children we can help. And our passion is to really help our beautiful children understand their emotion of anger, and as a result, be more included in everything from sporting clubs to social activities to family activities, but also in their classrooms. So that's our passion, and was always foremost in our mind. And for me, I know as a teacher, it was like, well, what would I want as a classroom teacher, as a time saver, and something that's accessible to the whole class, because busy classroom teachers often don't have time to do this. But I think doing this for 5 or 10 minutes a day will just make the world of difference.
Absolutely. And we know that learning emotional regulation benefits you academically. Children do much better when they're emotionally regulated.
100%. I mean, the research, 2/3 of children with social emotional learning do better at school, and yet we don't measure it. We don't measure it in Australia. We measure maths, English, but really what we should be measuring is the social emotional learning, because that has the biggest impact on the long term. So, okay, well, thank you, Kay, and I can't wait to see what book you create next for all of us who love your books.
Thank you.
I hope you've got some great tips and strategies to make a difference. Remember, strategies wear out, and not every strategy works for everybody. If you're ready to dive in deeper to more strategies and ideas to make a difference, I'd highly recommend you consider Dr. Tony Attwood or my online courses. For more information, visit my website www.suelarkey.com.au.